here we are, just a couple of days left before the voting day itself, although advance polls have opened up. How would you describe each party at this point in the campaign?
Okay, so I don't think anyone ought to feel secure. I think both parties are a little bit giving off some goat rodeo vibe right now, which is not unusual at this point of the campaign. Honestly, I don't think also any of the parties ought to be terribly happy with their performance to date. I think both parties have had comparatively weak campaigns where they've been both going from low point to low point. And I think right now it's just a competitive to see how low they can go before the end.
Okay, a lot to dig into there. Let's first dig into this idea that neither party should be comfortable this close to voting day. Because if you look at the polls, they seem to have shown that what was a tight race is now increasingly a race for the UCP. But you don't believe that?
Honestly, I never trust polls. You can't have covered Alberta politics for any length of time without having been burned by a polling prediction. Polling is very unreliable here traditionally, and I think that we are probably heading into a type of polling pattern where people really don't make up their minds until very shortly before Election Day. That being said, you know, a united UCP, a united conservative movement, and the economy is on an upswing, the Conservatives should be taking this. This shouldn't even be a race for the NDP. The fact that it is even remotely close tells you two things. One, that there is an extraordinary level of discomfort with leader Danielle Smith, generally speaking, and also that this campaign's been a bit of a mess for them. It's been rocked by bozo eruption after bozo eruption, revelation after revelation, and they, I don't think, have been very effective at putting forward a positive or unifying message. So even if they do win the election, I expect that you'll be back here in Alberta in short order, because the drama will not stop with this crew.
So if their election has, or their campaign has not gone to script, you also believe the same of the NDP, though?
I think the NDP's run a comparatively weak campaign. I think, look, their map is much harder in Alberta. The vote efficiency doesn't work out in their favor quite as much. They have to run, they've got to win or flip a lot more seats, I think, in order to do well here. So they always had the harder climb, and I think that they had to run a really amazing and aggressive campaign, and they needed to be much more visible and aggressive 6 months ago. Nolly hasn't really been anywhere for the last 6 months. I mean, I'm sure she's been working and doing her stuff internally, but from a voter's perspective, I haven't really seen much of her. I don't think they've come out with very visionary or inspiring policy proposals that have generated very much attention. You know, we have essentially a small business tax elimination followed by a slight corporate tax increase. I mean, this is not the stuff to be writing home about.
So what is working in the NDP's favor right now? What is working for Danielle Smith and the UCP at this point?
I think it's going to be a race between the question of, can you trust Danielle Smith to lead this party, or to lead this government, versus do you fear a return to the bad old days of 2014, 2015 under the socialist policies of the evil socialist NDP? So Notley herself scores actually very highly in Alberta, even in rural areas that are pretty conservative. She's a very popular person, but there's a high degree of distrust for her party, and there's a high degree of distrust for anything labeled socialist. And I think that enough's come out right now about Danielle Smith to raise serious questions about her constancy and her consistency on files and issues. Whether or not she's a person who's sort of perpetually flip-flopping on stuff, whether or not you can take her at her word, or whether or not she's just someone who's constantly spewing out the first thing that comes to the top of her mind. Is that the sort of person you want running your province, right? This is someone you need to be taken seriously nationally. And then none of that detracts away from her positive qualities. Excellent communicator, listens very well, and is obviously very bright. So, you know, I think that these are the two competing ballot questions, and I don't know which one's going to win as people are actually marking their ballots. No clue, no bets. just ominous dark laughter.
This is a really unique situation because you have two women here, two leaders here, both of whom have track records as premier.
Yeah.
How has that affected this campaign?
You know what? I don't think it hasn't. It's a really interesting problem. Both of them are, I think, qualified for the role. I don't think you could safely say that either woman is unqualified. I do think that Rachel Notley her track record is working against her because, of course, when she came to power in 2015, she came to power just as the oil prices had crashed, and Alberta was suffering from a whole bunch of these really intense macroeconomic issues that made this place a very dark. I mean, Alberta during a bust is not a party. But we all know that there is a Sun King element to politics in which voters will blame, rightly or wrongly, existing governments for the state of the economy. And we certainly know that existing governments, past and future and present, will try their best to take responsibility for the state of the economy when things go good. So she kind of, I think, has been associated in a lot of Albertans' minds with a dark time, a dark economic time. And I don't think she's done enough during this election to speak to the positive aspects of her record or to challenge some of those preconceptions.